Hello, friends. Welcome back to the appreciation of North Indian music. Today, we will talk about timbre, which is also known as tone color, and in Hindustani music, we call it Naad ki jati. So, like pitch and dynamics or volume, tone color or timbre is another property of sound. In North Indian music, we use the term Naad ki jati. Naad means musical sound and jati means type. This is what makes the sitar sound altogether different from the sound of santoor. Each of us have a different tone color, and that is how we differentiate voices of India's most popular singers like Lata Mangeshkar and Asha Bhosle, Mohammad Rafi and Kishore Kumar, Amitabh Bachchan and Shekhar Phatak. Oh. I think now is the most appropriate time to talk about various instruments that are used in North Indian music. Please note that the classical performances of North Indian music are always, or I should say, mostly solo performances. The main soloist, a virtuoso, of course, accompanied by a virtuoso rhythm player. There may be one more musician accompanying on tanpura. Well, with this phone or with this iPad or with the modern technology, the real tanpura, acoustic tanpura, has become a rare thing to see on the stage. An orchestra, an Italian word that means a musical ensemble. A musical ensemble, a group of instruments performing together, is overall a Western music concept. I'm not saying that concept of orchestra did not exist in India. It did, but not to the extent of what the modern Indian orchestra of today is. The closest term to orchestra in North Indian music is Vadya Vrunda. Vadya means instruments and Vrunda means group. Temples in India had this tradition of using a group of musicians playing conches, bells, manjira, jhanj, pakhwaj, veena, and sarangi all together with singers and dancers. They use this in worshipping ceremonies. Kings, yes, kings had orchestras performing for them while they took a bath. No, I'm not kidding. There is a written evidence of what I'm saying. An example is the book called Harsh Charity. This book talks about King Harsh, describing in detail what kind of orchestra and what kind of music and songs he liked while performing his daily duties. But in general, whenever we talk about Indian orchestra, we think about instruments like tabla, sitar, tanpura, flute, and so on. At the most, maybe sarod and shehnai or santoor. And that's it. But I must say that Indian orchestra has come a long way in the last 100 years or so. The credit goes to the film industry of India that in 1960s or so started using an orchestra of 100 musicians or more. My goal today is to introduce you to the sound of the modern Indian orchestra that mostly only the film industry uses. But before that, one of the most important fact about all the Indian instruments. All Indian instruments like veena, sitar, sarangi, flute, and even tabla were designed to mimic human voice. It would take me hours to go into the details to explain how these instruments were developed, so I'm not going to do that. Plus, all this information is overloaded on internet anyways. I'm going to cover most of these instruments in one episode today. Let us first talk about the types of instruments. Friends, all the instruments all over the world, all the instruments of all the world, they fall under 5 categories. Number 1, string instruments. The instruments that are made up of metal strings or strings made from animal skin or other body parts are string instruments. There are 2 types of string instruments. 1, bowed instruments like violin, sarangi, ravan hatta. These are the instruments that use a bow across its strings to produce sound. Second type of string instruments are called plucked instruments. Plucked instruments use fingers or plastic, metal or stone plucker to strike the strings. Striking the strings with these make a sound. The examples are guitar, sarod, mandolin, and a few more. Second type of instruments are called wind instruments. The sound is produced using air blowing into the instrument. Flute, clarinet, shehnai are the examples of wind instruments. Number 3, brass instruments. These in a way are wind instruments, but because of the tonality and the construction, they are a category by themselves. These are generally made up of brass with a mouthpiece that can be cup-shaped or like a funnel. Indian classical music rarely uses these instruments, except saxophone, which lately has become very popular, especially in South Indian music. Other examples of brass instruments are trumpet, tuba, trombone, and various types of horns. Category number 4, percussions. Percussion instruments. This variety of instruments produce a sound by striking or shaking. These days you can shake your phone and produce sound, but I don't think you would consider an idiot phone to be an instrument, right? Drums, tabla, vibraphone, santoor, khanjri, bongos, drums are some of the examples. And number 5, the last category, which is very new, is called electronic instruments. All synthesizers and electronic keyboards fall in this category. The synthesizer is so called because it creates sound by generating waveforms through methods including subtractive synthesis, additive synthesis, and frequency modulation or FM synthesis. You can find a lot of information on internet about these sound synthesis, so I'm not going to go into it. I will, however, give you a brief history. The first synthesizer, the first one, was built around 1955 by RCA Electronic. This was followed by a more sophisticated sound generator by Columbia and Princeton universities. These synthesizers were enormous in size. It occupied almost 4 stories of a building. Later on, Moog developed a smaller synthesizer that eventually came to India in 70s and was used by composers in the film industry mostly. Electronic instruments brought 2 big changes in music. Number one, the most obvious one, creation of new sound. Number 2, a composer's ability to create music without help of a performer. One thing I want to clarify, all electronic synthesizers are not Casios. Casio is a brand name and not a category. All electronic keyboards are not synthesizers either. Synthesizers are the ones that not only store a few sounds, but is the one that is capable of modifying or completely creating a new sound from the basic sine wave. There is a lot of information available on the internet about all the instruments that I am going to introduce to you. My goal here is to introduce you to the sound and not load you with the information about the history, the design, and the playing methods of these instruments. That is why for today's listening assignment, I have a small composition for you that introduces you to different tone colors and different Indian and Western instruments that are used in an orchestra. I have composed this work by using my digital sound library. So each may not sound like the original instruments, but it will be pretty close. But that is the best I can do also, since I live in United States and I don't have funds to pay artists and record in a multi-million-dollar studio. To compose and record this instrumental piece was definitely not an easy job. I had to plan for hours, compose it, play it. Can you believe it? I have used 40 instruments that are used in an Indian orchestra in a composition that runs just a little bit over 5 minutes. Yes, I have managed to do this in little over 5 minutes. 5 minutes and 6 seconds to be exact. Have I included all the instruments, all the Indian instruments in this composition? Certainly not. There are hundreds of instruments that are used in folk music all over India. There is no way I could have included all of them. I have, however, tried to include most of the instruments that are used on the stage almost 80% of the time. This Indian orchestral piece starts with 2 tanpuras. This is to establish tonic, followed by shakers, egg shakers, manjira, tambourine, kabasa, drums, tabla, and tumbi to establish the rhythm. The introduction of melody, which later on moves through different keys and different rag and also different patterns of rhythm, starts with santur. The instrument with over 100 strings, followed by various other instruments including Western violins, violas, double bass, guitar, various brass, and many other instruments who have found their home in India, especially film industry. Please Look for the names and types of instruments on the screen. The melody part moves through different scales, different rags, and various patterns, as I said before. Just like any North Indian classical music concert, the musical piece begins with a slow meditative introduction and then changes into a fast tempo finale with a tihai. You must listen to this piece of music on a good surround system, or please wear good headphones. You will notice that each instrument starts in the center and then moves to the left or right, depending on the position that musician take on the stage. Watching this on a bigger screen will definitely be easier for your eyes as the names and types of instruments appear on the screen. To become really familiar with the sound, you may have to watch and listen to this section multiple times. I have called this piece of music as Introduction to Indian Orchestra. Friends, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the Introduction to Indian Orchestra musical piece. Before you listen to it, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. This will help not only me, it will help you because you will get the notification on the new episode that will be uploaded every week from now on. Please, please, please subscribe to my channel. And thank you again. Now, enjoy Introduction to Indian Orchestra.